You can sometimes see it. And when these troops came home, many of them the fittest and best trained warriors that we ever sent anywhere were exposed to these burn pits. They weren't the same. And thousands of troops had to live in their hooches not far from proximity from these burn pits. The one in Iraq, my son was about 400 yards from one of the burn pits, living there for a year in his hooch. They breathe that toxic material sometimes for months at a time. In the case of my son and his buddies for an entire year, causing headaches, numbness, dizziness, cancer. This is not about my son, but just an example of how close it was. My son, Bo, was one of those persons. He went the fittest guy in his unit and came home and he came home but died of glioblastoma. It's personal for my family, but it's also personal for so many of you.
President Biden was in Salt Lake City last week celebrating the PACT Act, which is for veterans, for our veterans who have suffered since coming back from deployment because of the toxins. And remember, the Republicans tried to block it, and Jon Stewart had to go and tell them what for. So here was Biden, and this was why he was in Salt Lake City. Remember, they had that incident. But listen to one of the veterans talk about that legislation thanks to President Biden.
Fire, waste and garbage being burned, and the fuel and chemicals used on the aircraft. In 2022, during a spinal scan for a separate injury, a mass was discovered on my right kidney. I was just 23 with no family history of cancer. I ate right, I worked out, and I never smoked. Nevertheless, it was cancer, and it was growing fast. Shortly after, a friend from deployment let me know he had cancer in his kidney as well. I filed a claim with the VA immediately. Thankfully, the PACT Act reduced my paperwork burden, and it covered my illness.